If you are a person that wants to cause change and understand how change evolves, you might want to stay tuned to this video. Be right back. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, and we inspire. And I was inspired by a book by a gentleman named Malcolm Gladwell. Huge shout out to him. The book is called The Tipping Point. Strongly recommend. And not only on that subject, but it got me thinking about so many different things and different people. I'm so excited about going over this video for you. Let's get right to it. A world that follows the rules of epidemics is a very different place from the world we think we live in now. Just as a brief review from our last session, the three characteristics you have to keep in mind are contagiousness, the fact that little changes can have big effects, and that change happens not gradually, but in one dramatic moment. Let's first look at contagiousness. When we say that word today, we think of the COVID virus, or a cold, or the flu, something harmful or dangerous. We have in our minds a very biological notion of what contagiousness means. But if there can be epidemics of crime or rioting, or epidemics of fashion, tattoos and nipple rings come to mind, there must be all types of things that are just as contagious as viruses. May we use yawning as an example. Did you know that if you see somebody yawn, or if you're blind and you hear somebody yawn, you're very likely to feel the urge to yawn yourself? And when you think about yawning, don't you sometimes ponder if you are tired or you're sleepy? So the contagiousness of yawning is activated by sight when you see it, by sound when you hear it, or emotionally when you feel it and question your own tiredness in your own mind. Now, the COVID virus can't do that. Thus, contagiousness, in other words, is an unexpected property of all kinds of things. A key point to understand if we're to recognize and diagnose epidemic change. The second principle, that little changes can somehow have big effects, is also a fairly radical notion. Because we are, as human beings, heavily socialized to make a kind of rough approximation between cause and effect. If we want to communicate a strong emotion, if we want to convince someone that, say, we love them, we recognize that we need to speak passionately. If we want to break bad news to someone, we lower our voices and choose our words very carefully. We are trained to think that what goes into any transaction or relationship or system must be related in intensity and dimension to what comes out. Now, we've all heard the puzzle about starting on the first day of the month with a penny and doubling it every day for the rest of the month. Which would you rather have, the question is, the account that doubles every day or $1,000,000? The moral of that story is the virtue of compound interest is usually underappreciated. Mathematically, this is what is referred to as a geometric progression. Epidemics are another example of a geometric progression. When a virus spreads through a population, it doubles and doubles again until it is figuratively grown from a single penny to an immeasurable fortune of dough, of moolah, of money. Now, as human beings, we have a hard time with this type of progression because the end result seems far out of proportion to the cause. To appreciate the power of tipping points, we have to abandon this expectation about proportionality. We need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that sometimes big changes happen very quickly. I do believe recent history of this pandemic has taught us that both positively and negatively changes can occur. Then there is the idea of the tipping point itself, which might be the hardest of all to accept. The term herd immunity comes to mind when you're thinking in that context. All epidemics have a tipping point. Marketing people that are seeking an epidemic sales surge for their product or service know this factor all too well. Allow me to give you some examples. You know, at one time, I was a top sales producer for a company called Prepaid Legal. The concept of the service was that we are living in such a litigious culture that having a top attorney on retainer was not a matter of if you're going to need legal help, but when you're going to need legal help. It is inevitably necessary, like health insurance or life insurance, so you better buy this product. I bought into that concept and started marketing the legal insurance to middle America and to small businesses. It was a multi-level marketing company, Prepaid Legal, and the recruiting pitch was to join up with this product for the future before the paradigm shift, before the tipping point. That is the point that the bulk of society realized that it was a mandatory protection that they needed, and that the exclusivity of a unique product that was no longer unique because other people realized the same thing. They wanted you to get in on the ground floor, so to speak. That was the pitch. Now, aren't we being bombarded with a similar approach, an eerily similar personal insurance need with the product known as CarShield? You own a car? It's not a matter of if your car is going to break down, but when it breaks down. They're trying to create the tipping point for their product, aren't they? Or how about a different type of tipping point? When you live in a cold weather climate, one of the things that you always look for is the temperature during a storm. Why? If the temperature is above freezing, you get rain. Driving wise, most rainstorms can be managed. If the temperature is below freezing, then you get snow. Don't want to be driving during the storm, but when the city puts down salt and plows the roadway, driving is still fairly manageable to a degree. However, when the temperature is right at freezing, that's a major uh-oh. Why? Because you get freezing rain and sheets of ice. It's like driving on an ice rink. Worse, you can't even see the ice, and neither can others that are on the road. Very, very dangerous. And when there is freezing rain, ice forms on the power lines. This ice is very heavy and can bring these lines down, creating a loss of electricity, power outages. Thus, the difference between a storm at 40 degrees is much different than one at 28 degrees or 32 degrees. The difference in temperature is small, but the impact is significant and the effect is immediate. Eli, we live in a world where the tipping point is a place where the unexpected must be expected, where radical change is more than just a possibility. It's a certainty. I don't have to tell you that. You've lived through COVID-19 so far. There is more than one way to tip an epidemic. Epidemics are a function of the people who transmit infectious agents, the infectious agent itself, and the environment in which the infectious agent is operating in. When an epidemic tips, when it is jolted out of equilibrium, it tips because something has happened. Some changes occurred in one or two or three of those areas. These three agents of change are called the law of the few, the stickiness factor, and the power of context. Next time we get together, we're going to give you more details on these game-changing catalysts. So, until that time, always remember, don't ration the passion, fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.